So not long ago, I was sent a video by a friend of mine about the nature of someone looking to find remedy within the legal system. And I find these videos purely entertainment because to me, in my study of the legal system and my understanding of people that know way more than I do in regards to the legal system, the whole nature of going into battle with the legal system is a spiritual war. It's not a war fought on paper, which is the legal system. It's all paper and consent. It's all based on paper and consent and fiction and fraud. But the battle is a spiritual one, not a battle that's won and by any kind of remedy. And of course, you see these videos on YouTube, and they're legion of people that have found remedy through the legal system. We have found ways to have honor within the legal system, and with honor have what we would call small victories, or find remedy within the legal system itself. Now, I find that myself interesting because of my 4 years of working within the legal system, and also utilizing the techniques some people have given me, and what I've learnt through the legal system myself to find remedy within the legal system. I haven't found remedy once, but I have learnt to use some very powerful tools, one of those tools being the commercial maritime lien. After all, we are living in the West under maritime law, admiralty law, on the land, which is in itself fraud. But I have found remedy for me in the sense that I'm holding over people in positions of, I wouldn't call it power, but influence within corporations. I'm holding over them a commercial maritime lien, which is basically in 90 days makes it lawful and legally, and which is completely bananas, makes it legal and lawful for the property that they own up to the amount that I've set if they haven't rebutted my commercial maritime lien with every question that I ask them. It becomes truth and law, and therefore everything they own basically belongs to me. And my liens, I've got several liens, and I'm continuing that process of putting liens on individuals within the legal system who act dishonorably. But in this video, this woman was talking about how the nature of how she set up through notices of liability, and was holding particular individuals, CFOs, CEOs, corporations in a place of, what would you call it? What did she call it? She had them over about, pretty much she said she had them in a situation where they were and under her control, right? Which is absolutely comical. It's ridiculous in my perception, right, in regards to the legal system. What people have to understand is that the level of corruption, we are at the end of the Kali Yuga cycle. If you look at the Vedic sciences, even the Greek ages, we are in the end of the Kali Yuga cycle, the ascending Kali Yuga cycle. And I'll go back to the book Bibhu Dev Misra wrote called Yuga Shift. Read that book because you will get a greater understanding of what I'm talking about if you read that book and listen to him talk about this. We are in the ascending Kali Yuga cycle. And the Kali Yuga cycle is about going into the Kali Yuga cycle is like going into the darkest of darkest energies and cycles and civilizations. The levels of corruption, the level of fraud, the level of dishonor, the levels of no virtue amongst people within this system is baffling, mind-boggling, bewildering, beyond even my wildest imagination as an author. I've never seen so much corruption, so much fraud, never seen so much impunity from people in positions of supposedly of public office in corporations who act with impunity, do whatever they want. One law for them, one law for us. Well, one legislation for them, one legislation for us, and they will not even take the remedies given in the legislation and use them when they are asked to use them, or when you instruct them as a creditor to a debtor, which they don't like. But when you instruct them as the debtor and you being the creditor to discharge a liability and have remittance through the Bills of Exchange Act, for example, they just won't do it. They just won't do it. They'll do it amongst themselves, but they won't do it for you. And there's nothing you can do about it apart from really, realistically, go into their courts which are casinos, to find remedy. But how are you ever going to find remedy? And this is the point. This is the point that she didn't understand, I feel. And I mean this since, or comprehend more than understand in regards to their terms. She didn't comprehend the nature of the fact that this legal system is an inversion of God's law, natural law. And the most craziest thing of all, which I learned from Kurtis R. Kallenbach, is that the Jesuit Order under Ignatius Loyola created this legal system we have today. And the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola is the founder of the Jesuit Order, which is a military branch of the papacy, pretty much, founded this legal system. And it's an inversion of God's law. The Society of Jesus took God's law and inverted it and made a system, man-made system, a legal system, which basically is all based upon fraud and fiction. And how could you ever find remedy or justice within a system that is an inversion of God's law? It's a Monty Python sketch. You're basically going into a courtroom to look for remedy from a judge that can only speak to the dead. It can't speak to the living because it's a death-based system. I'm not going to get into how that works, but people who understand this, it's a death-based system. How are you ever going to find remedy in a corrupt, death-based inversion system that inverts God's law? You're never going to find remedy in there, ever. No way, no chance. Forget about it. And these people have all got each other's backs because they've all got dirt on each other. They're a bunch of gangsters who do whatever they want, whenever they want, and you're never going to find remedy. And that's the most important thing in the situation we find ourselves in regards to this legal system. This is not, if you are going to go into battle with this legal system, you're not, in my perception, you're basically going into you're creating and you're putting yourself into a spiritual war. Therefore, you have to act with honor and virtue every time. So the commercial maritime lens that I have over individuals, men and women within the legal system, I could, if I wanted to, assign those liens to the Vatican, to a Chinese bank, to a Russian oligarch, to some gangster, give those liens to these people, and therefore these people would come and collect and take the property, whatever that, and I mean all the property for the lien price that I've put on these individuals who've never rebutted them, so they're all truth and law. Or I could sell my liens to a debt collection agency, or I give the bank my lien and take 2% of my lien from the bank, which would be about $2.5 million if I wanted to. But for me, there's no honor in doing that. There's no honor in doing that because I would be violating God's first law: do no harm. No harm to property, no loss, no harm. No damage, no loss, no injury to property, this is property too. The body's property, the property of God, of the Creator, right? So therefore, for me to have the commercial maritime lien hanging over these people's heads is a force where I know that by doing that, I've basically put them into a position where they can't move forward in regards to for any kind of financial gain at all. With commerce, in regards to commerce, they can't sell their houses, they can't refinance their houses, they can't get credit cards. Their credit rating is zero, pretty much. And that to me is enough. I've held them in check, so to speak, held them accountable in that way. I'm not looking for a financial commercial gain by having a lien on someone and therefore taking their property from them and throwing them out into the street. That's not what I'm going to do. My liens are there as I act in the spiritual sense in regards to the war. And it is a war. It is a spiritual war. In my heart, I look to channel the creative force, and I look to ask for the help of the angels, especially Archangel Michael, to work through me to enact God's law, the Creator's law on earth. And the most important aspect for me in that war is moving from my heart and being virtuous by moving from my heart space and acting from my heart, moving forward from my heart in a way that I am acting with virtue and honor in a system that's dishonorable, purely and utterly dishonorable in every way. Now back to the yoga cycles. See, for me, in my perception, and the more I discover, the more I understand, the more I feel into this energy, and the more I feel into this truth, the scientific truth. And I really feel as though this is a really powerful message that Bibhu Dev Misra gives in the book Yoga Shift, is that the yoga cycle the ages of man, the Greek ages of man, the Yuga cycles, and of course other traditional cultures around the world that have the same perception of existence and of the cycles of nature, the bigger cycles, not the smaller cycles, but the bigger cycles in regards to the Yuga cycles, which are about 2,500 years, 2,700 years, 3,000, about 3,000 years pretty much, including the age of transition between Yuga cycles. Every 2,700 years, there's a shift in the Yuga cycle, and that cycle is like a bell curve. It goes up, ascends, and then it descends. And then we're at the bottom of the ascending Kali Yuga cycle, moving up the bell curve towards a more virtuous consciousness, a more virtuous civilization, a more virtuous existence, bigger brain cases, taller bodies, longer bodies, more athletic bodies, longer living. Due to the nature of the cycles, you move up into a golden age, you live longer, you have more brain capacity, you have more virtue, you have more connection to source, to God. But consciousness wants to experience the most deepest, darkest aspects of existence as well, and allow virtue to rise up out of that and move into this ascending cycle. So for me and my perception, I'm with Bibhu Dev Misra in regards to the science of the Vedic sciences, of the Yuga cycles, that there has to be, at the end of this civilization, and his calculations are the 21st of March 2025, the end of the Yuga cycle, 15 years, there will be cataclysmic events, there will be the end of this civilization, it will no longer exist. It will no longer exist. And with that is also comes with mass depopulation, enormous geophysical events, global conflict, and then moving out of that experience, conflict, also moving through the toroid and the Perseid asteroid fields, where the larger objects in 2032 and 2036, there's a potential for one of these objects, potentially even a comet, as the Hopi say, the fourth world will end in fire, a purification event that will come with fire, potentially with a comet strike, or the tail of a comet passing through the planet, or an asteroid strikes. But the fourth world will end in fire, and the purification events. And funnily enough, yesterday when I was reading Yuga Shift, there's two names in the Greek lexicon for the events where the earth is cleansed by the deluge, cataclysmos, and pyrokosmos. Pyrokosmos. Forgive me if I get that wrong, which is fire. And we're heading into the age of purification, moving into the Dwapara cycle. So we'll have about 300 years of transitioning into that cycle, but 300 years of purification of this environment, of the earth, of our civilization. None of this will exist anymore. This camera, all this technology that I'm using now won't exist anymore in 15 years. In 15 years, we'll be living in a pre-industrial world, the survivors of a cataclysmic events, and we'll probably have a time of about 300 years to transition out of the ashes of this civilization and everything that inverts the Creator's law as we move into the Dwapara cycle, and we move into the Bronze Age and the Greek classical ages, out of the Vedic sciences into the Greek sciences, the Greek ages. The incarnating beings, the men and women who will incarnate into that cycle, the Dwapara cycle, will have more virtue, will have more honor, and from that place we'll connect to and begin to connect even more to the creative force of our creative God, what do you want to call it, our creative force. And that will continue through the Dwapara cycle, and there'll be no need for a purification event moving up through the ascending cycle, because it's a movement up, and that virtue will become even more virtuous as it moves into the Treta Yuga cycle, the Silver Age, and finally the Satya Yuga cycle, which will be the Golden Age. We're talking thousands of years into the future. We're talking like, realistically, between 10,000 years and 12,000 years into the future, or possibly more actually, about 10,000 years, 12 into the future. But that's the nature of the situation we find ourselves in, and there will be, in my perception, and I'm not alone in this is just the sciences, I'm just verbatim saying what Bibhu Dev Misra says. This civilization we have now, which is based on inversion, the inversion of God's law, the Creator's law, will be gone, completely wiped out, into a place where it will go where it belongs, in the annals of history, tucked away somewhere. Maybe it'll be only a myth that this whole civilization existed at some point, And the horror for the people that incarnate into the Dwapara cycle to think that back, what would it be, 400 years ago, you know, for us now in the 21st century, looking back to the 17th century and thinking of the horror and the archaic life that the people were living back then. Well, in 400 years from now, the people living in the Dwapara cycle will look back in our age and this time and go like, oh my God, they did what? They inverted the Creator's law? Total dishonor, no virtue in that behavior. We'd never do that here. And that is my perception around this whole thing. It's a spiritual battle in this moment, in this time. And the most important aspect of this battle, once again, in my perception, I got hay fever, like my nose is running like a tap. There's pine where I'm staying at my friend's farm here in Kemuir in West Auckland, northwest Auckland. Over there behind me is Woodhull Forest. That's all pine trees. And we've had these 3 days of incredible winds and storms and rain. And all the pine pollens begin to flutter on the breeze over here. And I'm just sneezing my ass off. This hay fever. But I've lost my train of thought. But when I come back to this idea that this is where we are now, the spiritual war we are in. And for me, it's about acting with honor and being aware enough to be able to act with honor and virtue in almost every decision I make in my life. If I'm totally aware and self-conscious that every action I take in my life has to have, in my perception and my strong conviction, honor and virtue. Those are the most 2 important aspects of my connection to my Creator, and looking for and creating the space for grace to come through me. In my experience, by doing that, by being in a place where I am acting with virtue and honor in every way possible, especially towards those who invert the Creator's law. And that is, in my perception, the greatest effort I can make moving forward, the greatest conviction I can have moving forward when I'm dealing with in the legal system people who are corrupt, who act in fraud every day of their lives, and there's no justice within the system. There never will be justice within the system because it's inverted. It's an inversion of God's law, and everyone in the system, within the system, has got each other's backs because they've all got dirt on each other. So corrupt, and it's global. Not just here in my country, which is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. One of the most corrupt, and that says a lot. That says a lot. But hold the light. One candle in a dark room can light up the entire space. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mate wa. I'll see you again soon.